Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? This is Finite MTG. Today we're doing something a little different. Going over a Chaos draft. Did not record the draft or the matches, but I thought the deck turned out really sweet. So I wanted to go over the draft log, do a bit of a deck tech, just explaining how everything works together, because I think this deck, again, turned out pretty great. So let's dive right in here to the pack one pick one. So our rare is a Realm Razor, kind of interesting card. I don't think it's very good. Definitely don't think it's the best one in the pack. So, didn't want to try doing anything like that. There's a Dawn Ray Archer here. Most of the cards with Exalted are pretty decent, better than they look at the very least, and that pinging ability is pretty nice. It does put you into two colors if you want to use the ability, but it's not the biggest cost. You see a couple 3-color cards in the pack, so. Next up is a Fleshbag Marauder. This is a card that I was definitely interested in. It's not the best effect. You don't get to choose what the opponent sacrifices, but it is a removal spell that can get around things like Shroud, Hexproof, stuff like that, and it's definitely a solid card. This is a super nice removal spell. If you can kill two things with it, it's amazing. But once again, the problem is it locks you into multiple colors, a little bit like the Archer here. So I ended up going with the Executioner's Capsule. You can see the Double Masters reprint on that. Nice. Card's great there, great in my Star Wars cube, and just good in general. Just a Doom Blade that sits on the battlefield. Sometimes it's going to get destroyed, but most of the time it's going to do what you want it to. Yeah, nice and efficient, so that was my first pick. Now moving on to pack 1, pick 2. Got a few good cards here. I was thinking about a Vexing Gull as something I could take from this pack. There's an Ichthyomorphosis. We did just start with a black card, and the only black card in the pack is Aspect of Lamprey. Rare's missing, so it doesn't tell us a whole lot in terms of what color might be open, or colors. Aspect is okay, don't want to take it this early. So I ended up going here over the Vexing Gull, which I think was fairly close. I went with a Careless Celebrant. Card's a nice 2-for-1, also a 2-mana 2-1. And yeah, if I'm able to, say, like wheel the Fleshbag Marauder, pretty nice combo there. I think it's just pretty good in general. So, yep, moving on. Alright, pack 1, pick 3 is the first moment where it really feels like something's wrong, something is happening that should not be. So we do technically have a red card and a black card, so we could try to take like this Partic Collaborator and play it and pigeonhole ourselves into exactly red-black. But Faceless Butcher, the OG Fiend Hunter, and slightly better power, though a different color and more expensive, is extremely good. This should not be here third pick. It's probably a card that should have been first picked out of here. Flaming Gambit is kind of cool, but ultimately it's a Punisher card. I think it's still a pretty good one, but Faceless Butcher, in my opinion, is definitely the best card for me here. So that's what I picked up. Now here, pack 1, pick 4. We have a few good options. Sting Scourger, if I want to stay on color, it's fine. Sulfur Elemental is a card that can be okay. Can kill a lot of white X1s, but it can also help you if you have a white deck and toughness greater than 1. Giant Dust Wasp, really nice green flyer, which is a relatively speaking unique effect. But yeah, there's another amazing 2-for-1 creature here in the Shaper Parasite. Unlike the Faceless Butcher, the Shaper Parasite doesn't give the creature back when it dies, so no reason for me not to take it here. Not too worried about staying on color, just want to take the best card in the pack, and in my opinion, this is easily it. Alright, moving on here to pack 1, pick 5. Things are starting to get a little tougher. We see two very nice white-blue cards. We have the Dovin's Acuity, we have the Azorius Night Arbiter. But despite having a good blue card, I don't really want to take a blue-white-gold card here. I have a nice red card and two nice black cards, so I really don't want to give up on black if I don't have to, and yeah, I'd rather just go for a card that can make my deck pretty much no matter what. So that was Slimebind for me here. This is an enchantment removal spell, and the caveat there is you have to watch out for bounce spells. You also have to watch out for edict effects. So for instance, that Fleshbag Marauder, if you're ever spending a card on removing your opponent's creature that doesn't actually remove it, you want to make sure that it's not awkward with any of your other effects. So Slimebind was my choice there, and I think it was pretty defensible, though not the strongest card in the pack. Alright, moving on to this pack, we don't see anything amazing. We see a Farseek, which is a pretty powerful card, but we're kind of getting locked in here to blue-black. Red doesn't seem open to support the red card that we drafted, and there is a Lurking Informant here. The card is not amazing, but it can be very good, especially in the control mirror. It does double duty of effectively doing a Surveil one for you, or kind of a Fate Seal one for the opponent. And yeah, it's a little slow. It's not good in every matchup, but it is a nice card. It's on theme, and it's pretty much going to be able to make my deck 100% of the time here. Not a big fan of the Necroplasm. I think the card is a little too slow and not really what I'm looking for. Alright, next up here, we have another pack that would have been nice if we had gone on the Azorius route from earlier. We have a Guildgate, and we have a 2/3 flyer. Again, just want to stay on plan here, and Cancel is a totally acceptable card. I've actually been playing a ton of Cancels lately, and I've been really happy with them. I don't know if I've ever had really more than one in a deck, but one literal Cancel that is, but I've been pretty happy with this card. It does what you need to do in the control decks. It's not the cheapest effect ever, but unconditional counter, 3 is a fair price. So moving on to pack 1, pick 8. This was kind of a tough one for me. Some pretty good cards left in the pack for us. So Gatstaff Arsonists is a very strong threat if we wanted to reconsider going back into red. Rottenheart Ghoul is okay. It is a 2-for-1, but the body is somewhat underwhelming. There's a really nice defensive card for us here in the Silent Observer. And we are mostly blue at this point, so taking another blue card seems pretty reasonable. Really great against a bunch of the threats with 1 toughness. The fact that it's evasive means it can get in for damage here or there. And yeah, just think it was the best card for what we're doing. So liked that one a lot. That was my pick. Alright, now the original pack we saw comes back around. We see, in terms of an on-color card, 4-mana 2/2 Exalted, which is not the worst. It's not a very good blocker, but can turn threats into better attackers. But one thing that I love to do whenever I can identify the colors that I'm in is pick up fixing. So we see a Grixis Panorama here, and being able to find a swamp or an island is very nice. We can even splash red if we end up wanting to do that. We're not going to want to do that probably for the 2-mana 2/1 that we picked early on, but if we get a little bit better red card, like a nice open fire kind of effect, I think we would be interested in doing that. So yeah, easy Panorama for me here. Surprised to see it wheel. Alright, now a bunch of on-color cards come back around. The Stinging Lionfish is pretty cool. We do have some effects that we can use on the opponent's turn. There's an Aspect of Lamprey, which is a card. It's basically a Mind Rot. It's marginal upside in terms of lifelink and marginal downside in terms of having to pay 4 mana. The worst part about this card is that you have to target a creature, so you can get blown out pretty hard if they do something to it before it resolves. And there's just another Deny the Divine here. So I think you can make an argument for the Lionfish, but my deck's looking really defensive. I want one of these effects to kind of control a game. Lionfish I think I'd like more in a tempo-oriented deck, like the last draft I did on my channel where I ended up in blue-red with the Arena Trickster. Lionfish would have been amazing in that deck, but yeah. Here I just took the Deny the Divine, little redundancy with Counterspell, and definitely not unhappy about it. Easier to cast counter coming around. Alright, now we see this pack. We have kind of a weird effect here in Last Laugh. pretty much, it's a little bit like Massacre Girl in that whenever something goes to the graveyard, everything else gets hit, and then, you know, that can continue to trigger it. It's like self-perpetuating, I guess. I think it is a pretty weird effect. I've never played with this card before, and I decided, you know what, Putrid Imp might be great in Vintage Cube, and 5 mana 3/3 is really not going to be good anywhere, so I think I'll speculate on this last laugh. At the very least, I'll leave it in the sideboard, but maybe I'll even main it, and maybe if I don't main it, it'll show up in one of my matches. So I picked that one up here. Next up, we see a Riptide Pilferer. So one of the important rules of Chaos is all morphs are playable. That's for a few reasons. So this format is a bit different because normally 3 mana 2/2 is an acceptable but disappointing rate. In this format, I would say 3 mana 2/2s are borderline unplayable. But the deal with morphs is there's always this element of surprise. There are some excellent morphs, like the one that we originally picked from this pack, the Shaper Parasite, and there are cards like this, where the card is not excellent, but if you can sneak in for a point of damage here or there, if the opponent's afraid to block it, thinking it can turn into something big, bam, suddenly you're getting a card out of their hand. You have a 1/1 in play still, and that's a 2-for-1. So yeah, Pilferer, not an amazing card, but definitely a playable one. Alright, kind of weird pick coming around here. Nice to see 2 blue cards. The Quench is pretty tempting. It's cheaper than the counter spells we already have, and we already picked a cancel relatively highly. On the other hand, it has a big downside, which is it gets worse as the game goes on. The 2 counters I have right now, cancel is unconditional, and the other one can counter creatures or enchantments. But the nice thing about it is, the nice thing about both of them is they work at all stages of the game. And so Quench, I narrowly ended up choosing not to pick. I think this is the kind of card that would be excellent, again, if you were in a deck with the Stinging Lionfish, kind of tempo-oriented deck that wants to win early. So I went with the Humongulus here. Hilarious name, and 5 mana 2/5 Hexproof is actually going to be a super annoying threat for a lot of the aggressive decks to face. It's not, well, a super annoying defensive tool, I should say. It's not a threat, it doesn't really attack ever, but 5 mana 2/5, slightly underwhelming stats, but that Hexproof, man, that goes a long way on this thing. So, picked that one up. Next pick here, we have a Sadistic Augur Mage, 3 mana 3/1. 3 mana 3/1 is not really what we want in this deck, and I think we can do a lot better than this card. We ended up leaving that one in the sideboard. Now here we have a Search Warrant. Not going to play it. I don't think the card is particularly good. So it's not like we're supposed to be in Azorius or anything like that. And yeah, moving on to pack 2, pick 1 here. Very good start in terms of pack 1 in my opinion. We picked up a lot of interaction, a couple really nice 2-for-1 creatures, and we have a very strong control deck in the works. So now we have 3 good black cards here from which to choose. We have an Argel's Bloodfast, which is a good card, absolutely. I prefer it in the aggressive decks because that's where you're going to have more life to play with and to pay with, if you'll excuse the pun there. We have a Walk the Plank, nearly unconditional removal, extremely cheap. Caveats, in addition to technically being conditional, there are some changelings and whatnot going around, is the double black, and technically also sorcery speed. And neither double black nor sorcery speed would be the Vanquish the Weak. So I ended up going here with the Walk the Plank over the Vanquish. I thought it was pretty close. It's another one of those picks where, I mean, Vanquish is going to be very, very nice in a deck with all these counter spells. Not this one, though. And Walk the Plank, going to be a bit worse, going to be a little rougher on the mana. We already have the Grixis Panorama, though, to make the mana a little easier. And yeah, unconditional removal, just not something I like to pass. So that was our choice there. Now we see a pack with some very strange cards. We have a counterspell based on the number of wizards in play. So that's going to be 0 most of the time. 5 mana 2/2. It's kind of the original Squadron Hawk, if you will. A little overcosted, and remember, we're never getting multiples because this is Chaos Draft unless it's a foil. Pretty reasonable for one of the copies of this thing to wheel if there were a foil. And here we have this card, which is not bad. Kind of like a keep safe, but instead of drawing you a card when you play it, it draws you a card when you don't want to play it by cycling, which is kind of funny. Last card we're going to talk about here is the Riptide Shapeshifter. Very, very strange card, 5 mana 3/3, which is not exciting, but you can sacrifice it to effectively tutor something into play. And you can do some really, really nutty stuff if you pick up, say, like a Blightsteel Colossus, that kind of thing. But yeah, not an exciting card, so we just went with the Lonely Sandbar here. Excellent land, high pick in Modern Horizons, as you can see from the set symbol, and just a very nice card that will always make our deck and improve it. Alright, next up we have this pack with almost nothing on color for us. The only blue card is massively unplayable. We have Psychotic Episode, which is kind of a weird card. I don't think it's very good, but it's kind of cool. It's a relatively unique effect. A discard spell that puts the card to the bottom of the library. Not unplayable, something that I would consider out of the sideboard. And as for something to main deck, we have the Deathspore Thallid here. Excellent card, very good against X1s. Takes a little time to get going, but this kind of effect is super, super strong in Chaos Draft, so snapped that one up. Alright, so here we have a few more on-color cards, but I would say most of them are much worse. We have 4 mana 4/2 with some irrelevant text. Abstruse Interference. We already talked about not wanting Quench, and this is even more conditional and just as expensive as Cancel, so not a big fan. 5 mana 4/4 is playable. Blinding Drone, 2 mana 1/3. Not great. And there's an Oblivion Strike. So once again, unconditional removal. That's going to be my choice here. 4 is about the right price, and would love it if it were instant speed, but the card is still good. No question for this pick, in my opinion. Alright, next up here, we see a pack with 0 blue cards. The only black card is a 3 mana 2/2 Menace. The other text basically doesn't matter, so we have our choice of mana fixing here. Sanctuary, the Evolving Wilds, or the Amulet. I ended up going here with the Evolving Wilds. I think it's a little better than the Amulet. You don't have to spend mana on it. Shuffle effect for 0 can be kind of nice depending on the cards in the deck, and it's not like we know that we're splashing white or anything, so even if I just end up 2 colors, the Wilds will improve my mana. Remember, we already have one double black card, or no, we have multiple double black cards. We have the Faceless Butcher, we have the Walk the Plank, and we have some number of double blue effects as well. So Wilds is a nice one here. In this pack, we have kind of a weird one in the Noggin Whack. It's a little bit like a Mind Rot. There's a Prowl cost. We actually have a few rogues in the deck, but basically the idea is if your opponent has 2 cards, it's a Mind Rot for 4 mana, or 2 sometimes. Or if they have more cards in hand, then it's a lot like a better Mind Rot effect, but for 1 black mana more. We passed the Aspect earlier in terms of Mind Rot effects, so it'd be kind of nice to pick up one. Not a big fan of Sage's Dousing. The Morsel Theft is pretty terrible. Negate is interesting. It's a card we could play. I think it would start in the board, but definitely an interesting effect for us. And Distant Melody is not great. So Noggin Whack was my pick here. Alright, now in this pack, this was actually a crucial pick for 2 of the matches. So we have a Soaring Seacliff, card that can be good in aggressive decks. Kind of same goes for the Vampire's Bite, though I really never like this card. It doesn't really win you almost any combats that you weren't already going to win. The Lifelink is kind of the saving grace for this card, but it's still just not very good. Spell Pierce, kind of like Negate, is an effect that we would consider, and 5 mana 2/3, we're not even going to read the words on that one. So, Bog Tatters, 5 mana 4/2, not the best body, but Swamp Walk is amazing in the right matchup. So A+ sideboard card for us here. This is a way to close out games, and we have counter spells to protect it. Alright, next up we have this pack where there's a 2 mana 1/1. We can make our opponent discard cards, but there's a non-bow on the card itself. You have to have Threshold to activate it, and then you have to try to reduce your Threshold count to make them discard. So not a big fan of the Inquisitor. We ended up going here with the Dirty Were-Rat. Card that is not amazing, but maybe in the right matchup it can be pretty good. If it didn't have that can't block text on there, I would consider main decking it. I think the card is decent. Alright, next up, only on-color card is a Skittering Heartstopper. This means that someone took the Argyle's Bloodfast and the Vanquish the Weak, but the Heartstopper, totally playable card. Again, you get a nice mana advantage when you trade a Death Toucher for a more expensive creature, and in our control deck, we want answers, and this is an answer. Alright, in this pack we already talked about the Wizard counter and the Seahawk, so we'll talk a little bit more about the Shapeshifter. So one of the tricks we're able to do with this card is get the Faceless Butcher into play. We have no other Nightmares or Horrors, so pretty expensive to turn this thing into the Faceless Butcher, but the fact that you can do it at instant speed is really nice in response to any kind of removal. And we have some other good creatures too that we'll be able to choose if we would like. So I ended up picking up this thing, wasn't sure if I would main deck it, but I ended up main decking it and liking it quite a bit. Now we pick up the Psychotic Episode for the sideboard. And now we actually pick up a card extremely late here, a card that is very, very rarely good in Chaos Draft. Multiple times have I tried to get colorless mana to work, and no, sorry, I'm not talking about the Walker of the Wastes. I'm talking about the Blinding Drone. So the Blinding Drone, 2 mana 1/3 is a serviceable body. It's not a particularly good card, but remember, we have that Grixis Panorama, which has 2 modes effectively. First mode is tap for colorless, and the most memorable mode is search for either a swamp, a mountain, or an island. So the Blinding Drone here, we're kind of close to being able to make this thing work. It's a good defensive card. I actually wanted to wheel it the first time and see if maybe I could pick up some colorless sources in pack 3, and I was very impressed with this card. Alright, now we pick up just a Voracious Vampire, playable effect, but not a very good one. And now we pick up a Negate for the sideboard over a Sage's Dousing. And yeah, pack 2, pick 15 is a Plains. Right, moving on to pack 3, pick 1 here. I will spare you all the trouble. We have a Decree of Pain. That card's unbelievable, super, super good against the aggressive decks, and every now and then you're going to pay full retail on this one, cast it for 8 mana, and draw a million cards. Super nice card. This is the kind of deck that can survive until we have 8 mana. And it's the kind of deck that really is going to need this card to get it out of some troubled spots at some point. Passing Shoreline Ranger, another excellent card for us, and a Zombie Cutthroat, amazing card for any deck. But yeah, Decree of Pain, not a card I can pass. Alright, now we have a pretty easy choice for us in the Silver Mirror. We just picked an 8 mana card, and Ramp is looking amazing right now. Don't really need to worry about the mana base in terms of this being a blue source. Like this could be almost any kind of mirror, and it would probably still make our deck here. But being an on-color one is just icing. 3 mana 1/4 Vigilance, kind of decent defensive body for this style deck. There's also a Pewter Golem, 5 mana 4/2 Regenerate. Not a very good card, but yeah, mirror is just more important for what we're doing. Alright, now this pack is the first real whiff we've had in a while. I decide to go with escape routes here. If we pick up some black creatures with particularly good enter the battlefield abilities that we can reuse, so not counting the Faceless Butcher, this card could be something we're interested in. Otherwise, there's a Morgue Toad, kind of a gray ogre that can ramp you if you need it to. And just a kind of cycling effect that very rarely matters in the Issei's Ingenuity, but every now and then it does. So yeah, took the escape routes there, kind of a speculative pick. Now we pick up a Seda Sanctuary. Amazing pack, by the way, for green-black. Double consume strength. One of these is foil and an Ebony Tree Folk. If there's a green-black player in this draft, they're going to be so happy when they see this pack. So yeah, Sanctuary, technically on color, but doesn't really do anything. That said, 3 mana 2/2 with off-color ability is never going to make our deck. And 1 mana 1/1 with a terrible ability is also not going to matter. Alright, next one here. We only have one card that I like. We have the Witch's Eye. We already have something a little similar in the Lurking Informant. But I think the Informant's way better. This thing requires a creature for you to go nuts. And also, yeah, it just doesn't have a body, which is not very exciting. There's a Voyage's End here, card that's a great answer to tokens, good in tempo style decks, which this is not, good against enchantment removal, and Scry 1 is just solid value. So, not seeing a ton of black cards, but still get to pick up a strong effect here. And I have to wonder if not seeing a ton of black cards can be attributed to passing the Vanquish the Week in the Argyll's Bloodfast in Pack 2. At the same time, didn't really have much of a say about that. We were going to pass 2 solid black cards no matter what, so if somebody moves into black, good for them, bad for us, but don't think we could do anything about that. Now we see another pack where technically there are no black cards. We have a Devoid card here that costs a black mana, and we have probably one of the most important effects for the entire deck here in the Blighted Fen. So there's a ton going on with this card. One, it's effectively a removal spell that's a land, which is amazing. 2, we have the Slimebind, the 1 enchantment removal spell. And remember, we were talking about earlier, edict effects can be really awkward with enchantment removal. But the fact that this is a land, meaning that it's not going to get stuck in our hand and be awkward, is very nice. And most importantly, of course, this is a second source of colorless mana for the Blinding Drone. So now we're in a spot where we get to use the Blinding Drone. Both of these lands that produce colorless can be sacrificed, but we're not going to sacrifice either of them until we know that A, we have both for the Blinding Drone, so we can sacrifice the Blighted Fen and still have the Panorama, or B, the Blinding Drone dies. So very nice pickup in the spell land for this deck. Super happy about how this card played. Alright, now we have a very white-blue looking pack with technically, I will say, 5 cards in white-blue. We have 2 Talon Troopers, one of which is foil, of course. We have the Ardent Plea, which is solid, and Arsenal Thresher, which is technically castable for us and always unplayable in general. So this is one of those moments where you have to wonder if you were supposed to be in a different combination of colors, but again, I think we couldn't do anything about somebody moving into black. And frankly, these Alara Reborn packs are almost always stacked like this. It's very difficult to get a card that you like from these packs unless it's like a basic land cycler. So we took the Ardent Plea just for fun, and moving on. So now we see one card that we would really like to have, which is the Supernatural Stamina. This is an amazing combat trick. We have that 5 mana 3/3 shapeshifter that we can sack to find something, and the stamina is going to let us bring that back. It's just a good effect in general, and yeah, Nest of Scarabs is unplayable. Okay, so now we have Putrid Raptor, not a very good rate either way, either a 3 mana 2/2 or you're doubling it for a 6 mana 4/4. It's difficult to discard a zombie, and it's probably not something you want to be doing even if you can. Otherwise, there's a Dragon Wings card that I do not like. It has cycling, which is kind of the redeeming factor. Probably should have been my pick here, but considering that I like neither of these cards and I don't want to play either of them, I went with the Raptor here. Alright, so now we wheel one solid on-color effect for us in the Pewter Golem. One of the problems I'm starting to realize with this deck and part of the reason we took the 6 mana 4/4 last pick is because we have a very, very hard time closing out games. We have tons of removal, we have a bunch of counter spells, great interaction, a tapper that we can use even though it requires colorless mana, but we have almost no way to just attack and try to kill the opponent. So we have to take the golem here. Not much of a choice in the matter, and this thing actually overperformed in my opinion. I had to wait a lot of the time to play it until I had counterspell backup, because as one of my only threats, you know, I'm in really bad shape if this thing just gets killed. But it's nice with the supernatural stamina that effectively acts as a counter to removal, and this thing can just usually attack. It's not very common you find something with 5+ toughness that can block it, and even if so, I can just spend a removal spell on that. Alright, now we pick up a Morgue Toad here, technically a playable card, though something that I don't expect will make my deck. Pretty similar thing to say here about the Quagmire Druid. We see one of the Consume Strengths and the Ebony Treefolk Wheel, meaning there's player at least speculating on a Consume Strength or hate drafting one, and assuming that player took one toward the beginning of the pack, they'll be ecstatic to get one of these back, or, well, potentially to get both of them, but only to pick one. Now we take a Titan's Strength because unlike Demolish, it's a playable card. And we take an Angelic Gift because it's a spell. And the Arsenal Thresher, that's technically playable for us, came back around anyway. We just took that off-color card, and now we get this unplayable. So yeah, this is how the deck turned out. We ended up going here with an 18 land mana base. We needed... we had a bunch of those utility lands, so I didn't feel too bad about playing so many. And yeah, this deck really wants to hit land drops, make sure it has double of each color when it can. One of the cards that overperformed that I was excited about was the Riptide Shapeshifter. We would end up being able to find the Pewter Golem with that one, which again was kind of our win condition here. Decree of Pain, unfortunately not something that we could tutor for. Never cast it for full retail, but every time I cycled it, it basically won me the game. So that was very, very nice. Yeah, the deck was just super solid overall. Took out Lurking Informant in the kind of aggressive matchup versus a creature deck. And yeah, the Silent Observer and Homunculus were excellent blockers. The colorless lands were amazing, and the deck was just really, really nice. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you're alright not watching the matches. The deck did not end up trophying. Once again, we got annihilated by Sam Islandfelt, so kind of funny that that happened twice, but really would have liked a trophy with this one. Still, thought I would show you guys the deck, if not the matches, and I hope that you have enjoyed watching. So, see you again next time.